like you remember this vision that you had when you were a kid. Like,
I want
do you remember, like, having, like a like a passionate belief in, like a certain career you were gonna have?
Oh, yeah. I had 2, and the first one and I remember the first one, and I have no idea why, but I wanted to be a stunt double. I was like
Oh, okay.
I was like
Yeah.
I just kinda got caught up in do you remember? Because we 'Cause we're almost the same age, right? I'm 41. How old are you?
I'm 38.
You're 3, yeah,
We're a few
we're
years
pretty
apart.
close. Yeah, we're pretty close.
Yeah. Just
I
like your
re
kids.
Right, right. I remember when I was a kid watching movies and looking for the camera tricks, you know? Like, I was
Yeah.
like, when they would fly through the air, I was looking for the
Mhm.
string, you know, looking
Yeah.
for how they did all that
Yeah.
stuff, and I would catch the stunt double, you know? And I just thought it was so cool that these people would like fly through the air, bang on walls. And when I was a kid, I mean, we lived in a 2-story house, and I remember I take the cushions off the couch and put them like on the bottom floor, and man, I
Mhm.
jumped, dude. I would like
Yeah.
jump from the first thing all the way down. You know,
Yeah.
I learned how to like pretend to pull your hair, and you know, I'd light my hands on fire with the inflated tire stuff. I put it on my
Mhm.
arm and I'd light it on fire. And then, like, I remember I almost burned the house. I almost burned the backyard once. That was not a good memory, but like,
Yeah.
I got pretty beat up after that. Um, but yeah, stunt double. I remember I was like, this is what I need to do. This is my calling.
Yeah, I think that there's so many kids that have, and I don't think that, I think a lot of times people gender identified, like, adventure with, like, boys,
Huh.
and like, I don't know, that's kind of a side note, but I think, like, just, like, in general, kids have this, like, deep sense of, like, adventure,
Oh yeah.
right? And, like,
Yeah.
exploration.
Yeah.
And like catching something that's wild, like uh like, I kid you not, and I don't think I got a video of it, but like 3 days ago, so there's like these, my boys are like real into nature, and my mom buys these like laminated pamphlets, like venomous snakes of Tennessee, or freshwater fish of Texas,
Right, right, right.
or like, and they're just like these nerdy little pamphlets that have like the picture, and then like the highlight hits of, like, it looks like this, it eats this, it gets this big,
Right, right.
whatever. Well, they have like a dozen of those, and of like all different kinds of stuff, and they have a Isaiah runs into the house the other day. They'd been on a bike ride. Isaiah runs into the house and he goes, Dad, you're not going to believe this. And I was like, what? And he goes, I just saw a Mississippi kite. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. It's a type of bird of prey. It's called a Mississippi kite. And it's like, it's gray and white. Come out and look at it. And I was like, okay. Right. Like, go outside, and he points up, and sure enough, he has this pamphlet in his hand. He goes, "Look, it's a Mississippi kite." And, like, shows me the picture. It, like, totally matches. I mean, it's
Oh, really?
definitely a Mississippi kite. Yeah. And I catch him later. I mean, he's like looking at this thing. He's just like, I can tell that like the gears are working. And I was doing something, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, I have a plan, and I need you to tell me if you think it's gonna work." And I was like,
Oh,
"Okay, what's up?"
right.
And he goes, I think I know how to catch one of those Mississippi kites. And I was like, "Oh, really? Like, do you?" He goes, "Yeah, they're birds of prey, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, they eat meat." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, uh, "And we have meat in the refrigerator. I'll bet if I tied it on a string and, like, swung it around, it would make the kite curious enough to, like, swoop down, and when it did, I I could catch it."
Whoa, okay.
You know, in my head, like, my initial response is like, "No, no, you're not gonna swing meat around your head in the
I
front yard, like, no."
I would totally let them do
And but I
that.
kept that I kept that in my head.
Right,
I
right,
kept
right.
it in my head, and I was like, "Okay, it's see what you can find." And he goes,
Alright.
"Okay, alright." So he, like, rummages around in, like, the refrigerator, and then he, like, goes into the garage, and, like, goes back into his room, and I hear him shuffling around for a little bit, and he comes out, and it's like 90 that day, and he, like, comes out in, like, his like, a black jacket. He has, like, one of my, like, leather work gloves. He's got a string. He's got this, like, it looks like a 6-foot long shoelace, and then he has a package of, generic pepperoni, and he was like, he was like, I think I'm real curious to see if I can do this." And I was like, "I'm real curious too, to see how this is gonna work out." Well, he goes into the yard, he, like, strings he puts the string through, like, the little hole in the pepperoni package. He, like, opens it up and, like, ties it off, and then he stands on our sidewalk for probably, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, something like a
Wow.
good, like, a legit good amount of time for me to, like, go, "Oh," and then walk away and go do some stuff, come back, and he's still doing it, and he's just standing there. He's got his leather glove, right? Because he's got his leather glove on one
Right.
side, and he's swinging it with the other, right? Because he's gonna catch that bird of prey. It's gonna land on him and get that pepperoni. And I was inside doing something. Rachel was outside, um, and he goes. She texted me and she goes, "Come outside now." And I was like, "Okay." So I come out, and it's circling probably 30 feet above his head.
No.
Yes. Yes. I was like, "What?" Mutt, come here, come here, come here. Good boy. So, yeah, I mean, that was an adventure
Ah,
these last few days.
did he try to did he
So,
actually I mean, did he try to
I mean,
reach for it?
it never came closer than that, but, I mean, it circled above him for probably, I mean, a couple minutes at least. I mean, it was a
Man,
couple minutes before I came out, and it, it kept going for a little while longer.
that's awesome.
So, no,
That's so
you need to
cool.
stay. I know, but, like, that's what I was saying, is just like there's just like a like I really think that kids have this, like, sense of adventure and, like, traveling, like, no, no, and, like, just being able to, like, find things that are, um, mm-mm, uh, finding things that are, like, just, like, really interesting and, like,
Yeah.
exotic, and, like, just be able to do stuff that they've never done before. And, I mean, it was just like, that just reminds me of, like, stuff. No, no, that just reminds me of stuff that, like, I did when I was a kid, right? And just, like, want to be a stunt man, like
Yeah,
a stunt double, right?
yeah.
Like, hey, you can get paid to be like to do all these dangerous things your mom told you to, like, not do with,
Right.
you know, her kitchenware, and like don't jump off the garage. Uh, I think it's, I don't know. I think there's something inherently wild about kids.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. Oh yeah. In fact, I feel very strongly that we kill that. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
like we
I think
totally like.
school does a great job of it.
Well, I mean that's a whole that's a whole thing. But I mean, I think even just as parents, I think we over sanitize, and like I mean, we have we have a snake, and that's Evelyn. That's my daughter. My daughter has a snake. Mason has a bearded dragon. We go, when we're out somewhere, if they're like, "Hey, do you see that?" And of course, I'm the science person, so to
Uh-uh.
me, dead things and like squishy things. I mean, I'm we're down for that. And Abby
Yeah.
will go and grab like things, and then they'll spin off into like, well, maybe that's a secret castle underneath, and maybe the
Yeah.
toad's really trying to tell me that there's like a princess that's underneath the ground, and oh look, there's a hole over there. That must be the entrance to the and then it's just like on and on and
Yeah.
on and
It's
on.
just a rabbit hole.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it's like, you know what? Yeah, let's do this. Like we're
It's
gonna
like
go.
if YouTube was a person.
Exactly.
Just like
Exactly.
you just like you they just like click down the
Right,
hole,
right,
man.
right, right. Click and click and click and click. Oh yeah, no, 1,000%. Oh no, all
Yeah.
the time. That's one of the coolest things I think for me as dad and teacher too, because it's like, as I mean, in both situations, it's kind of like I'm down for going down a rabbit hole. Like I will go down
Yeah.
that freaking rabbit hole with you 1,000%. I
Yeah.
mean, any time of the day, because to me, I want to keep those wheels lubricated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
constantly, because that creative thinking, man, we use that all the time. I mean, when do we not
Yeah.
need to come up with creative solutions to pay the water bill, or to or to get
Right.
out of a really tough situation,
Or to fix the water line
or,
ourselves because we can't afford to get it done. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I mean, we need that. No, oh man, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times we've just, like, the last time I took them to Lake Tawakoni, um, just looking at sticks. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you just
Yeah.
finding funny shaped sticks, and we'll turn that, or they'll turn that into whatever they think it is. And I know it's unconventional, but I let them climb all over the place in the house. Like they're climbing on the walls. They'll jump off of the couch, and I
Yeah.
think they need that. They need to have that sense of adventure. It's
Yeah.
innate, And you're right. I don't think it's gendered. I think it's both.
Yeah. And I think that there's just a lot of, I think that there's a lot of societal expectations as a result of all of that, that we need kids to, like, it's more valuable to have kids who sit quietly in school so that we can teach our lessons, as opposed to having like curious kids that are interested in doing things in new ways, right? And I think that that's uh I think you're absolutely right. I think that we've, you know mutt, come here, mutt, mutt, uh come here. Sorry, my dog is out here without a leash. Come here.
Oh, you're fine.
Come here. Come here. Mutt. Good boy. Come here. I know there's dogs barking. I know you probably know what they're saying. So um I think of I think of, like, how have playgrounds changed in the last 25 years?
That's interesting.
You know, like,
Yeah.
how many fewer metal surfaces,
Ooh.
how many more, I mean, when I was a kid, uh, like, playgrounds were pipes in concrete,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you fell off the monkey bars, I mean, you might be going home with a traumatic brain injury,
I
right? Like, I mean, and then, like, I remember when I was 5, I had my I mean, that's 33 years ago, right? Like, I wanted to have my 5th birthday party at McDonald's,
yeah.
right? And it's like, I mean, I was born in November, but man, it was still 90 degrees in Houston,
Yeah.
and all the all the playground equipment at McDonald's was metal.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember, like, the OG McDonald's playground?
Yeah.
Like the hamburger that you could climb up to that had bars around it? I mean, it kinda looked like a tiny prison,
It was a
and
prison.
they were like, only so many kids you could fit in there.
Oh
Come here,
yeah. Well,
come here.
I got a story for you on that one, because we went
Good
with
boy,
Evelyn.
good
We
boy.
went out in East Texas or some little town. We're just kind of like, weekend driving around. Huge, massive playground, big old metal slide. She's like, "I'm gonna get on it." Sure, get on the slide. I didn't even think twice. I just saw the slide. I saw other kids jumping off the slide.
You
Go
know,
for it.
3rd-degree burns on your ass.
I, wait, wait. So I'm talking to somebody, and then all of a sudden I hear screaming, and they're like, "Oh, I think that's your kid." And I'm like, "Really?" And Evie's coming up to me, and she's screaming. She's like, "Oh no, no, daddy, daddy, daddy!" I'm like, "Oh, what's the matter?" She's like, my head, man." I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, baby." Turn her head around, and I swear it was like choom, choom, choom. I mean, it was like arterial blood. It was just like choom, choom. The blood was just like gushing out. And I was like, holy crap. I put my hand on the back of her head. I was like, what the hell? Where were you? And then I go look at the slide. From far away, it was big, but
Mu
it looked okay. Then it was, like you said, this like steel metal, like 80-year-old slide, and like the
Yeah,
edges were sharp. I was like, "Oh my god!" She had to get stitches. We went to the ER. It's like, "Oh my god!"
man.
How did we survive that stuff, man? That's what I don't get. Like, they didn't even think
I
twice
mean,
about it.
that stuff happened to us, and our parents were just like, "Well, just,
And
we'll put a Band-Aid on it, or
yeah, yeah.
rub some dirt on it, walk it
I
off."
I met a ER. I met a guy who worked in the ER, and he said, that he was around, just like what you're saying, when we were kids, we were around people that would get cut, bruised, broken bones, whatever. But now, because kids aren't doing that, they're melting at the sight of blood. They don't know how to handle these high pressure situations because they're not used to seeing other kids get hurt. Now it's
Yeah,
like, oh, somebody said something bad about me in a snap, and they can't handle it. Whereas
right.
opposed to back in the day, back in our day at least, you fall off a bike, you snapped your leg, or you got some really
Oh my
bad road
gosh.
rash. It's like, oh well, we'll see you tomorrow. you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think about that a lot. I mean, my boys, like, well, I mean, we've got a great neighborhood. There's like there's a good amount of streets that they can ride down and stuff they can in. Like, they can go a pretty far distance without crossing any major streets. But I think about that, like, when I was a kid, I'd leave my house at like 7:30 in the morning in the summer, my friends were up, and like whoever was up first, we just went and pounded on doors, and then like Mutt, sorry, my dog's wandering. Come
No, you're fine.
on. Uh, you know, just I mean, there'd be like 7 or 8 of us, and we'd like literally spend the whole day, like until the street lights came on our bikes. And I can't tell you how many times one of us would just like would be going down a ditch or a culvert, like trying to do a jump, or like riding through like these big drainage pipes that they were putting in, you know, in a new part of the neighborhood for new development. And dude, I mean, we'd just bleed.
Right.
We just, I mean, you just bleed. I mean, I mean, it hurts initially, and then you know, I mean, the blood stops, and you just
Keep
keep
going.
riding, clean it up when you get home. And I
Yep.
mean, there was, you know, I can think of it. I remember like my buddies and I, we found like this table, like we found this table in the woods, and like, of course, we stood on it
Of course.
because we have no parents telling us not to stand on the table, and that's all we want to do. So we stand on the table. Well, I mean, how long it's been in the woods, I have no idea, right? It like totally crumbles, like right when, you know, the third person gets on. And like I caught like the corner of it, like when I came down, it was just like kind of like sliced right across like the inside of my leg, right next to my knee, just a bad gash.
Oh,
And I mean, we were on the other side of the neighborhood. I mean, I was probably like 3 or 4 miles from my house. Plus, we were in the woods, so it was like we were like 150 yards into the woods and like 3 miles away from home. Like, what could I do? I bled for a little while, you know?
yeah, yeah. That's how it was, man. That's how it was.
So,
You just dealt with
yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's. I don't know. I feel like, especially now. I mean, think about how like uber worried we are now. I mean, if we were, people were microphobic before. I mean, shoot, now it's kind of like a
but come here.
necessity. So it's like, how is, depending on how long, and this is gonna last forever. But I mean, I wonder how
Yeah,
that's gonna affect kids. Especially like
come here.
growing up right now. Like, are they gonna be more fear adverse? Are they gonna be more risk averse? Are they gonna be like, or do we help them find ways to like be risky? Like, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, you know, I think that I think that that's a really important but kind of hard balance to strike. Is like, you know, eventually your kids are gonna have to choose their own risks, and until they learn how to do that, you've got to kind of mitigate your values in ways that both protect like certain risks, or protect you from taking certain risks and allow you to take others. And I think that that's something that, you know, I mean, all of us, individually at least, have to decide for ourselves and for our kids, you know. But I think at some point down the line, our society got so afraid of fear that we've taught children to avoid it, you know.
Wow.
And I think that that is, I think that that's a dangerous thing, right? Because I
Yeah.
mean, you think about fear, and fear has a, it's got a place in our biology,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Hundred
fear
percent.
is a really motivating factor in keeping us alive, right? In different circumstances, like a healthy dose of fear, you know, can be a good thing.
Oh yeah.
And um you know, I just wonder when kind of collectively it it changed for us because it's like, people don't want, hey, no, not where I can't see you. Um, Talking to my dog like he's my son. Um,
Well, they are your babies. They're your babies.
um, I just kind of wonder when it shifted and kind of changed for us to, like, really try to protect our kids from the fear of acceptable risk, right? Like, I mean, obviously, like, as a decent parent who has my moments, I'm generally going to try to always keep my kids safe, but I also want them to be independent. And that's going to mean that they have to learn how to take some of their own risks. And I have to be able to let them do that, even seeing maybe the consequences. But, come here, come here, hang on,
Yeah, you're
come here,
fine.
come here, come on, come here. So good. I think that, maybe you can see me better here. I think that, like, we've even decided that, acceptable risk is too dangerous for kids, and so we've kind of removed the ability for them to start to discover for themselves, like, what their boundaries are, right? And what their limitations are or should be, and which limitations are worth pushing, and which aren't. So, I mean, and honestly, I think that goes back to, we're, like, all kids are born with, like, this innate wildness, right? Like, this wilderness
Yeah,
aspect to them, and, like, we've tamed it out of them.
yeah.
We've tamed it out of them, and, like, they only know captivity.
Oh, wow, captivity. Yeah.
So,
No, it's well, and then here's the other part too. Like, how do you know what you're made out of unless you do that? Unless you push those risks. You know what I mean? How do you know
yeah,
who you are as an individual? How do you understand, like like raising your hand in class is risky. And maybe 10 years ago it wasn't that big of a risk, but now when that's like the arena where you push boundaries, to raise your hand is a really big deal, because you could get it wrong and you can get on Snapchat and they could record you and it could be all over the internet, and you could have
yep,
a internet viral thing and you can look like a moron in front of the whole world, and that happens in seconds. And
yep,
this is something that I think I try to kind of like, I don't want to like go on a pedestal, because I mean, you know what I'm talking about, but it's so important that people just understand that, I mean, it's still a risk to them. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
you're like, the only difference between us and our children, one of the biggest differences between us and our children is that we have X number of years ahead of them in experience. So
yeah,
that swinging the pepperoni and trying to catch him, he's got to do it. It's going to be an experience for him. It's
yeah,
going to be a great story. It's going to happen. But you also understand that that's an acceptable risk for him to do that, and you're willing to let him do that, right? So it's
yeah.
so it's fine.
It's only gonna cost me a package of pepperoni.
It's only going to cost you a pack of pepperoni, exactly. But what he'll learn from that, and the story behind it, and what everybody that's gonna watch this is gonna learn is
Yeah.
just invaluable. It's just
Yeah.
amazing. But that same experience is is the risk that kids take when they raise their hands in class. It's the same risk because they don't where else can they push their boundaries if they're not allowed to go outside and not allowed to bleed and mess up their knees, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Writing your name on a piece of paper. I mean, as silly as that sounds, it's, in their eyes, it's still a risk. What if they screwed? I can't even
Yeah.
tell you how many times Mason has gone super upset because he got his name wrong. And that could be a personality thing, that could be just him
Yeah.
because he likes to get things right. But I mean, if he
Yeah.
doesn't get it right the first time, it's like, oh, he just falls apart. It's like, dude, we can try it again. Like it's no, 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 I got it wrong. I got it wrong. And he's 6. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
so,
I've got one of those.
yeah, exactly. So, it's the kind of thing where it's like, well, what do you do? Like
Yeah.
you gotta let him do it. You gotta let him take those
Yeah.
risks.
Yeah. I don't know,
What
man. It's really interesting to think about stuff like that, and to I don't know. What were you gonna say?
No, I love talking about this kind of stuff because I think it's I think it's discussions that we don't talk about mostly. It's like thoughts and afterthoughts that we have, and then we got to get back to the mayhem and the routine, and we got to get back to everything. But it's like these little moments that we really need to capture more often because this is where we can like reflect and like not re-strategize, but like we can kind
Okay.
of reassess what's important, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that stuff is important, man. That stuff is super important. I mean, I don't.
No, I wonder if it. I also wondered too, like when you were saying that, um, if there's if maybe our society hasn't. It's not that they've prevented kids from having fear, or or rather, it's like that we've exchanged one set of fears for another. Like that kids are now afraid more of people's opinions, or maybe the risks the students don't want to take at school, or because the risks at home are so great.
Mm,
Like the maybe their home life is so tenuous and so fragile, and like held, like the pieces are just barely being held together, that they're that already feels like it's broken, and so they don't want to take risks in a school environment because they've got enough risk at home.
hmm.
I'm wondering, because I mean, I that just made me think about like kids at home right now,
Oh god.
and uh not maybe wanting to risk doing something that they don't really have a whole lot of guidance on, and might get wrong, while they're worried and stressed about all this other stuff going on in the world. It just makes me think, if like the amount of fear is not greater, but just directed differently than it
Hmm.
used to be.
That's entirely true.
I
Because
mean,
I mean,
it's possible that it's true.
well, I mean, it's not true. And here's the
True.
other here's the other part too, like kind of like you were saying, fear is still fear, right? So
Yeah.
whether it's them being afraid of, like you said, kind of raising your hand, whether it's them being afraid of screwing up the good thing they have at school because everything at home is so miserable, like
Yeah.
it's still that fear and that worry and that, you know, um preoccupation with, like, oh god, I hope I don't screw this up, like that's still there. So that,
Yeah.
yeah, that totally makes sense to me.
Man, I moved inside because it was dark,
Yeah.
and I'm not scared of the dark.
I was gonna say, are you afraid of the
I'm
dark?
scared of what's in the dark. That's what I told my dad one time.
Oh,
I think
did
it
you
was,
really?
yeah, I think it was, I don't know, 12 maybe, something like that. And he came to, kiss me goodnight or tuck me in or something like that. And he like turned out my closet light, and I was like, "Don't turn out my light." And he was like, "Why? Are you afraid of the dark?" And I was like, "No, I'm afraid of what's in the dark." And he was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
He left it on. I'm not kidding.
That's
So
that's pretty higher level thinking there, Mr. Clarke.
yeah, well, earlier in my life, I was not afraid of monsters under my bed. I was afraid of Miss Piggy under my bed.
No, you were not afraid
Yeah,
of Miss
yeah,
Piggy.
Miss
Are you
Piggy. I'm telling you,
serious?
man. Yeah,
Miss Piggy?
100%. Yeah, I think it was her
Why?
voice. Well, she was mean. She was mean to Kermit,
She was
and
total
I mean, she
narcissist.
wasn't. Yeah, um, and it just like her voice. There was something about her voice that like uh, I associated with badness. I don't know, but
Okay,
my go ahead.
no, go ahead. You're what?
I was just gonna say that my bedroom was like at the end of our hallway when I was growing up, and my bed was right in front of the door. So what I would do is I would back all the way up and get a running start, and then like when I got to my doorway, I'd like power jump, like long jump into my bed.
To avoid her?
Yeah, yeah.
Of all
And you
the
can laugh
people
all
to
you can well, one, you can laugh all you want, but let me tell you something. Miss Piggy never got me.
Hey,
She
there
never
you
got
go.
me.
Well, there you go, man. You did what you had to do.
It worked for me.
It worked for you.
It worked out.
That is the funniest thing I've ever heard. Well, to really forget, do your kids play Roblox?
No.
Okay, because there's actually a game on Roblox is like a kind of like a Minecrafty thing with all these different games, and one of the most popular games right now is a game called Piggy, and there's these little pigs, and they like try to kill you. So
Uh-oh.
yeah, don't get on Roblox.
Yeah.
Is basically what I'm
Okay.
trying to tell
I won't.
you.
Yeah.
Don't let your kids on
I don't
Roblox
need to be
either.
triggered.
No, yeah,
Okay.
you will be triggered.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what did you want to do when you were a kid? What was your like dangerous, or what was your super passionate like thing that you wanted to do when you were a
Yeah.
kid?
So I um my the the career I can most remember being passionate about and kind of like coming back to when I was a kid was paleontology. I was like incredibly into dinosaurs, like real into dinosaurs.
Really?
Um, yeah. I had all these like National Geographic, like dinosaur encyclopedias, and I was my dad subscribed me to like a paleontology peer reviewed journal or something like that when I was a
Really? Like a
kid.
scientific
Yeah,
journal?
yeah. So I got like, it was like a quarterly, so like every 3 months, I'd get this like real. I mean, I didn't know, you know, 78% of the words that were in that. Um, when I was 6, my dad brought Jurassic Park home from the library. Um, and so I read Jurassic Park as like a 6-year-old,
Whoa.
which uh, which again didn't have, I didn't know what a lot of the words were, and having read it since, there's definitely some adult content in there that I didn't pick up on.
Right.
Um, but yeah, man, I wanted to be a paleontologist. Um,
Really?
yeah, my hero was Robert Horner. Was and so Robert Horner was one of the guys who like he and his team of like paleontologists they've discovered like I don't know. I mean, it's something crazy. They like in China and like the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, they had discovered um, like these like a handful of dinosaurs, and I was, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to discover dinosaurs that no one had ever heard of before.
Okay.
And
So
then
how did you go from paleontology to English? Like what happened? Because that's a pretty
it is,
I mean, I think
yeah.
a
So
lot of kids are into dinosaurs, but you were like, wow, you were
I
super
mean,
into
I
dinosaurs.
was into him. Like I knew. I mean, I've forgotten quite a few, but like I knew um, like world renowned paleontologists by name,
Wow.
and like knew which dinosaurs they had discovered, and stuff like that. I've since forgotten all of that, but I mean, I was like really into it. I mean, like pretty deep in the game, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and then so I kind of I got real, when I was like good in probably junior high and stuff like that, you know. Um, I mean, I was always into like science and like biology, and in high school I took, AP bio and AP anatomy and physiology, and
Wow.
like I mean, I really enjoyed great science teachers. Um, and I had crazy English teachers, and um, I mean, I think I might have told you a while back, like when I was talking about my dad. Like, I mean, I was gonna be pretty limited in where I could go to school because it was gonna be what I could afford.
Right,
Um,
right, right, right.
and I initially went to Texas Tech, and the schools that I applied to because they had range, wildlife, and fisheries management majors. Um, the only school that I in Texas that I didn't apply to that had that was A&M. A&M was off the table. I was not going to go to A&M. Um, and so I ended up at Tech because it was really far away from my mom. There was like I got accepted to like a really small liberal arts college in Anchorage, Alaska,
Whoa.
that was pretty well known for um, like its wildlife program. Um, I I mean, I think the only school that I applied to that didn't have it was UNT. Um, but yeah, I mean, I went to Tech and majored in range, wildlife, and fisheries management for one semester until I had to take biology for science majors with uh, Dr. Dini, which is a weed out class at Tech. And so
Oh.
yeah, so if you're like a non-science major, you take bio from like these like 6 or 7 other professors. But if you're a science major, you only take biology from Dr. Dini. And I mean, I was about 11 minutes into that class, and I looked at the syllabus. He was going over the statistics of how many people drop his course on average in a semester. And I knew in my heart of hearts I couldn't do it. Um, so I left his class,
Wow.
packed up my stuff. There was a bench outside. I sat down on the bench, and I thought, what the hell am I going to do? Um, and then I realized that during orientation, I'd taken some English credit by exam tests. I took some CLEP tests, and I had 2 years worth of English. Um, and then I remembered that honestly, like being a teacher is one of the only things that I can remember seeing myself doing from the time that I was a kid. Right? Like when I was in pre-K, when I was in kindergarten, like when I was in third grade, when I was in fifth grade and sixth grade, and like being a teacher has always been something that I saw myself doing.
Really?
And when I knew that I couldn't do like, because I wanted to be a game warden, I wanted to work for the Texas Department of Wildlife and Fish and Game. Um,
Wow.
so that's what I was gonna major in, so that I could do that. Um, but I had this English credit. I needed to change my major, and it turned out that um, I just I had this other thing that I had actually kind of always been thinking of. So that's what I did. I walked over to the College of Arts and Sciences and changed my major to English.
Wow.
And because I had that credit, I didn't lose any time on graduation. Um, so yeah, it worked out.
Jeez.
The rest is history.
So you literally walked in there and you were like, no, like it just
I couldn't do it. Yeah, I knew.
you just knew.
I knew. I mean, I just, yeah, and I mean, I've done hard stuff before. Like, it wasn't, for me, it wasn't a matter of like, is it, is it something that I'm like, do I want to do this so much that I'm willing to kind of bend over backwards and break myself in order to do it? And the answer was no. I didn't want to do it like that, and I knew it was going to be a struggle. I wasn't great at math. Uh, like, I mean, I liked biology and stuff like that, but I wasn't like great at it. There were like, I liked a lot of the concepts. I liked, like, there's a lot of stuff that made sense to me. But this guy was gonna, I mean, it was gonna, he was gonna make it seem like I had never heard the word science in my entire life, right? Like, I thought that he was,
You think
yeah,
you
I
know
mean,
science?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I just knew. I mean, I knew looking at the syllabus, I knew like the expectation that he was going to have. I already had heard about him, like, from other people.
Right, right.
Like, I mean, there was, I mean, and they weren't, I always thought that they were like kind of exaggerating about Dr. Dini. And man, I knew in like the first 11 minutes of that class that they weren't exaggerating at all. And I was like, well, uh, can't do this. So, I mean, I ended up graduating with a teaching certificate.
Oh
I ended
yeah?
up graduating with, like, ready to go into a classroom, theoretically. Um, and I'm glad that I did it like that. But yeah, that was a hard conversation that I had to have with myself.
Oh
I was like, because
yeah.
I'd been, planning on this one thing, and with this one outcome for, at that point, probably 6 or 7 years. And I had to have a really honest conversation with myself about, like, is this really something that you can do? And if it's something that you can do, is it really something that you want to do?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think we know now what the answer was. But uh, yeah, that was, I mean, I always really enjoyed science. I wanted to pursue science. So, yeah,
It was meant to be, man.
yeah,
That's I mean, it's hard to have those conversations, but isn't that cool talking about risk and everything? I mean, that was a big risk. That was a big risk
sure.
for you to have been like, no, this isn't what, to be like
Yeah,
right on the edge of that and be like, no, this is actually not, this is actually not
yeah,
what it, and then switch gears. I mean, that's a huge risk, huge risk.
yeah. What's interesting is, like, it didn't feel like that at the time.
Mm.
Like, it feels much bigger now when I look back at it. I mean, back then, I mean, my prefrontal cortex wasn't fully developed, and so
Mm.
I wasn't necessarily thinking about the long-term consequences of changing my major, or like walking to the English department. I just knew I couldn't do Dr. Dini's class. Like, I can't do this. you know, like this is the thing I can't do, so I've now got to do something else. I've definitely got to drop this class in time to get my money back, you know, because
Right.
it's my money. But
That was legit your money.
yeah, so I mean, I mean, but sometimes life is like that, man. I mean, just like you look back and you're like, wow, that could have gone a whole other way,
Oh,
you know. And sometimes you're like really far past it before you can recognize like all the different ways that it could have gone, you know. um
100%.
I mean, like I said, I mean, at 18 I was just sitting on a bench going, what do I do now? You know, like, do I call my mom before I make this decision? Do I just walk over there? And I mean, it just made the most. I've already got all this English credit. I might as well go over there. And I like to read. I like to write. I like to help people.
Hmm.
Why not just major in English? And like when I did, it clicked.
Really?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
clicked?
I
What
felt a
was?
lot of peace about it. Well, I mean, it just made sense. You know, like, and I had already gone through one semester. Dr. Dini's class was going to be the second semester of my freshman year. So I had already taken wildlife classes. I'd already taken some classes, you know, and like the wildlife department, um, and I'd done really well in those. And it was January of my freshman year, you know, and like I said, I mean, I did well in those classes, but there was just something that, I mean, it just felt like the shoes didn't fit,
Yeah.
you know. And I
Hmm.
mean, I still wore them, and it worked out. And like I said, I did really well in those classes, um, but I didn't really pick up on that until dropping Dini's class and switching over to English. And then like when I did that, when I got into like my first set of um, English classes, I was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is where I fit.
Mm.
You know, and because I'd taken those tests, I was able to start the second semester of my freshman year. I was able to start taking like upper level courses. You know, so I was in there. I was in uh, because I had 2 years worth of credit. I was taking English with juniors and seniors,
Wow.
and so you know, that was, I was being challenged intellectually, you know, by my peers and not just my professors, um, on a different level, and that was a whole new experience. Um, and it worked, and it worked out, and I'm glad that it did.
Yeah. 100%.
But there was definitely a period of uncertainty there where like I didn't really know what was going to happen or how. So
It worked out. I mean, you said we could say
it
that
did.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, but that's that. Yeah, that's still a pretty big
Benefit of hindsight.
2020, man. Hindsight's always 2020. Always 2020. No, I think that's awesome. I think
Yeah.
that's awesome. Especially because you trusted yourself enough to say, okay, this makes sense. and I'm
Yeah.
gonna just roll with this, you know, because there's a lot of, I mean, how many people do things that don't make sense, but they don't know what else to do, and so they just kind of move or chug along because it's like, okay, well, this doesn't make
Yeah.
sense, but I'm gonna just still keep doing it.
Yeah. Because that's what's expected, or that's what, you know,
Exactly.
they've they've been envisioning. You know, I think I think a lot of times that's just that's a product of our environment, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
and what was expected of us, you know, what risks were we rewarded for taking and punished for taking and stuff like that. And my I can say that my parents they always let me fail.
That's awesome.
You know, they let me fail. They let me get it wrong and figure it out. And I mean, there were points at which, you know, they had were offered more guidance or help, but man, they always wanted me to experience my consequences,
You
you
should.
know.
You
And
should.
sure,
Well,
yeah,
I mean, but
yeah,
that goes back to what we were saying earlier. You know, just you gotta let them screw up. You gotta let them chase the
yeah,
kite. You gotta let them fall. You gotta let them bleed. You gotta like if of all the times
yeah,
in your life where you should be able to do that, you know, when you're a kid and when you're
yeah,
young, that's the time. Like that's exactly when those opportunities should be, because you don't get those in early. I mean, when else are you gonna get them? Or you're gonna get them later
yeah,
on when when the consequences are, you know, 1,000 times worse. You know?
yeah,
No, I think it's
yeah.
awesome. I think it's awesome, man. We
Last week,
we covered some
it's
ground.
the last week of school. We did.
Oh, I know it is. But okay, so it's weird because is it technically the last week because or is it next week the last week?
I mean, the issue for me is that, like, I've got a bunch of kids last week that took the AP test that are having to they're gonna have to retake it, and the retake is June the 2nd.
Why are they
So
retaking it?
I had a bunch of kids that had submission problems.
Ah, well, how do you
Yeah.
feel? How do you
So,
feel about that?
oh, I mean, everybody. I mean, I feel like pretty. It was a pretty common problem.
Yeah,
Um, so I mean, I filled out a college board survey or like an AP survey
yeah.
about, you know, experiences for the kids and stuff like that. And I had you know, kids tell me that they requested the retest date before they were done with the test. I was like, oh gosh, okay. So that's how this, okay. Yeah, just, I mean, I feel like my expectations were already pretty low. And then when they told me that, it was like, maybe my expectations were actually higher than I thought.
I set the bar too high for myself.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. But I mean, I've just got final grades and that.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, just 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 want the year to end, man.
Yeah, man. I
Just
feel
want it to end.
I think we're all in that same boat. We're all just kind of ready for this to be over with. Well,
Yeah.
it's good talking to you. It's been great
Yeah, man.
catching up with you.
For sure.
Um,
Next week.
Next week we will catch up, maybe some reflections on the year. Now that I'm pretty sure next week we will be done, and
Yeah.
we'll see.
Sounds good, man. All
Appreciate
right.
you. Be good. Be
Hey,
safe.
thank you.
All
Yeah, you
right.
too. Take it easy.
Take it
Bye,
easy.
one.
Bye.